Hello and welcome to Left, Right, Center. I'm Shaun Boyd. Just over a week until Election Day, and if you haven't filled out your ballot yet, it's a long one. The last time we had more than 14 statewide initiatives was in 1914, 110 years ago. The measures address everything from school choice to judicial discipline. We begin with Proposition 127, a ban on the hunting of mountain lions and bobcats. Here's what you need to know. California is the only place that's banned mountain lion hunting, and while studies show the lion population is stable there, Sierra bighorn sheep are endangered, and state biologists say the deer population has seen a huge decline due to mountain lions. Joining us, our analysts, Republican Dick Wadhams, Democrat Mike Dino. So, Dick, Parks and Wildlife manages mountain lions and bobcat hunting right now. They give out permits and such. You know, what's difficult, I think, with this measure and for people to make a decision on it is you've got wildlife experts that are disagreeing on, you know, they're on both sides of this. Does that help or hurt? Do you think it's passage here?
I think it's going to help defeat it, because when you have professional wildlife managers saying, no, we need this to maintain a balance for other wildlife, I think that's very compelling. I personally, Shaun, I just have a hard time thinking about shooting a bobcat. I like cats, and I just hate it. But on the other hand, I think those are very compelling arguments, and I think most voters will say, well, if the professional experts say that this is needed, or that we need to have hunting, then I think that's where they'll go.
Yeah, and that's, you know, Mike, opponents, that's what they say. Decisions about wildlife, whether you're talking about the gray wolves or the big cats, those are best left to Parks and Wildlife. You know, supporters, though, they're making an emotional appeal here. Like Dick has said, you know.
Dick loves the cats.
Yeah, right.
He's not eating any, is he?
And, you know, and they say this is just trophy hunting here. Although you do have to prepare the meat for human consumption.
Right.
I think, you know, most of us agree that if you're hunting bobcats, hunting mountain lions, you're probably doing it more for sport than anything. Which argument do you think is going to sit with voters, you know, sway them?
Well, I rode my bike over from downtown to the station, and there in Denver we have some animal issues, 308 and 309, and the sign said, "Vote yes for the animals." So I do think, I mean, when you know, well, number one, you're going to have some Denver ballot issues on fur and on the animal processing plant.
Yep.
And so, you know, Denverites are already got signs all over the place in my neighborhood says vote yes for the animals. I think you extrapolate that statewide. I mean, urban populations here, of which we're almost 90%, I think, in Colorado, don't have a lot of experience, you know, with wildlife other than, you know, some of our suburban communities do deal with mountain lions, and I do think they may have some feelings about that. But the bottom line is I think people default to supporting the animals.
So it's the emotional appeal that's going to stop with them, even after the gray wolves and all the controversy we've had with them.
There are no bobcat barbecues in Denver, Mike?
No lynx luncheons.
Lynx are endangered. They're already protected. All right.
Okay.
We're talking about serious stuff here, guys, all right?
Yeah.
Among the ballot measures that may seem like a no-brainer is Amendment H, which creates a new board to conduct judicial misconduct hearings. Supporters say it will increase accountability and transparency, but here's what you need to know. All complaints regarding judicial misconduct will still be screened by the current Commission on Judicial Discipline, which handles 99% of those complaints in secret, and nothing about Amendment H would change that. Over the last 40 years, only 12 judges have been publicly sanctioned out of more than 7,000 complaints filed. So, Mike, you know, the only argument against this in the Blue Book, it's interesting, is that the current system works, so why change it? That's far from the truth. I mean, this whole thing was prompted by this scandal involving the state Supreme Court and justices in the state Supreme Court. Since the other opposition isn't mentioned there, I just got to wonder if people are just going to look at this and go, okay, yeah, I'll pass it.
Well, it seems like a hard one to discern. It's perfect for the legislature to deal with, but obviously that's not the case here. We're seeing a lot more people, you know, want to be doing legislature by the ballot or issues by the ballot. And I would say this, that when you look at the ballot and you vote for the first part, and then you got to go through all those judges before you get to the issues, I mean, that is tiring. Right. And I think voters need a better way to figure out how to make a judgment on re-upping judges. We have 3 Supreme Court judges. In fact, that's one of the more controversial things that's out there, is our Chief Justice is under fire for her position on the referring or voting for the Trump issue going to the Supreme Court. I don't know if I got that right, but whatever the case is, there are people who want her recalled for that reason. And so I think the public has a hard time figuring this out. If they don't get it, I think they'll vote no.
The legislature is the body that referred it to the ballot in this case too.
Well,
so interesting.
It would have been better if they would have legislated it rather than asking us to vote for it.
I think it required some changes to the Constitution itself in order to deal with this judicial discipline. It's embedded in the Constitution. You know, it's interesting. You bring up the judicial retention questions. You know, should we retain this justice? The complaints that are filed against judges for misconduct right now, they are not even shared with the board that makes the decisions about whether to retain a judge or not. So you can go and oh, well, that board, they looked at this judge and they said deserves to be retained. They haven't even seen the complaints. There could be 20, 30, 50 complaints against that judge, and they wouldn't even know about it. And again, the legislature referred this to the ballot. I'm not sure that they really went far enough here.
No, and it's another example of the legislature not doing its job, and yet they complain when too much goes on the ballot. So, but you know, this whole retention issue, Shaun, I'm glad that this has come up, because I think the fundamental change that I think should be considered is requiring a 60% or some kind of supermajority to be retained. I think that would get the attention of judges, and they normally get above 60, so it's not like a bunch. But I do think there would be some judges who would not be retained, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I just think it would even better thing would be to have more transparency in this whole process, so that we know more about
voters need more information.
And some of these complaints may be bogus. They may be just from somebody who lost their case, didn't like the ruling, and that's fine. We can look at those and we can gauge those. All right.
Okay.
That's tiring.
Let's turn now to Proposition KK. It would increase the tax on gun sales by 6.5% to generate $39 million a year for victim services, mental health care, and school security. Here's what you need to know. Victim services are largely funded by fines imposed on criminals, and courts have been reducing those fines in recent years. Proponents say some organizations are in danger of closing if Prop KK fails. Opponents say gun owners shouldn't have to pay more because criminals are paying less. So, Mike, you know, the gun store owner that I talked to said if victim services is a priority for the state, then the state should just pay for it. And a lot of states do have a continuous stream of revenue that they put toward victim services, recognizing that these fines that come through the federal government just are not there anymore to fund this. If this doesn't pass, do you see the state stepping in and putting more money toward victim services? They put some, but, you know, a limited one-time funding.
It's hard to see the state doing that. I think next year they're going to have a fiscal crunch. A lot of the pandemic relief funding that made decisions easing on spending for the state the last 4 years has gone away. You know, interestingly enough, this is the only gun issue on the ballot in 50 states this year.
Wow.
Yes. And
I didn't know that.
Yes, it is. And in light of the mass shootings that have happened this year, it has kind of surprised people that we are carrying the only one related to guns and putting this tax on it. And so I think that it does, you know, will it help people if it passes? Definitely. You know, I do federal funding advocacy, and, you know, we try to get federal funds for a lot of these victim services. Those are drying up too.
I know.
And other grant money. So I'm supporting this ballot measure. But again, you know, guns is a very flashpoint issue for people, and they might see it as something anti-gun.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about like 240 plus organizations in the state that have seen funding drop by tens of millions of dollars over just the last 5 years. So there's no question about the need. You know, Dick, there are a lot of gun owners in Colorado.
Yeah.
Do you think enough of them will care about a 6.5% increase in the tax? Now, I put this in perspective. The Wheat Ridge gun store owner, where I went, if you combine that with the taxes that are already in place for guns, you're talking about a 24% tax on a gun purchase in Wheat Ridge. But, when people look at their ballot, they're going to see 6.5%.
I don't think it's punitive, Shaun. But I think, number one, this is another example of the legislature not doing its job. If this is an important program, which I think it is, they should appropriate money for it. But second of all, I think this is a thinly veiled attempt by the far left of the Democratic Party in the legislature to punish the gun owners. This is just to get at them, and I think it's part of the overall strategy to just methodically undermine gun rights in Colorado. And I really think that's part of it.
What's interesting is, talking to this gun store owner, you have a lot of crime victims, think domestic violence survivors and such, who come in and buy guns.
Oh, sure.
Sure. So
exactly.
It's more
So
expensive for them.
Yeah.
More expensive for them, too. School choice is also on the ballot this year. Amendment 80 incorporates school choice in the state constitution, and it broadens the definition to include private and homeschool options in addition to charter schools. Among those opposed to it, the Christian Home Educators of Colorado, which notes the measure gives children the right to quality education but doesn't define quality education, opening the door to lawsuits over everything from curriculum to teacher qualifications and school funding. Meanwhile, the ACLU says by giving parents the right to direct their child's education, the measure could lead to things like book banning. And, Dick, if that's not enough, if this passes, it really is all but certain to end up in some kind of legal battle. But if it fails, there's also the concern that it could embolden state lawmakers who've been opposed to charter schools. And there was just a bill this past session that would have really made it more difficult to form these charter schools. The state's two largest charter school organizations have not taken a position on this. You think that's telling?
Well, clearly it wasn't written very effectively. But I will say this, the same liberals who think we need to put abortion access in the Constitution, because even though it's currently in law right now, are the ones who are saying we don't need this in the Constitution because we already have school choice. Now, there's a little contradiction there. I think, and the other thing is, oh my Lord, these howls of this will destroy public education. It's so weary of that argument, and I'm voting for it. There might be problems with it, but if it's education choice, I'm for it. And so there you go.
So you talk about end of the world scenarios, sky is falling. The teachers union does worry that this, especially since it includes private schools, it adds them to the definition of school choice. That what this could lead to is vouchers for private schools. You agree?
It could be a slippery slope. You mentioned one Christian organization not supporting it, but the Archdiocese of Denver is supporting it. And we've had some controversy. You mentioned the teachers union. Well, the pro ballot measure 80 said that the head of the teachers union was supporting this ballot measure, and they had to retract that. Right. It gets people's excited. I think that the main thing is would it have the votes to make it into the Constitution? It's a higher threshold. It's 55%. Yeah. Dick's one vote may get it above 50%, but it doesn't get it to 55%.
Where are you at on it?
Yeah. Where are you, Mike?
I may not be listening to the Archbishop on this one.
All right. Well, if you'd like to watch all of my reality checks on the statewide ballot issues and view all of our election stories before voting, go to our voter's guide on CBSColorado.com. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching Left, Right, Center. We'll see you next time.